My name's Lynne Perl, and I'm one of the volunteers on the Sydney South African Film Festival. I am so thrilled to be speaking with Vikram Dasgupta, the director of Beyond Moving, and Siphe November, the star of the film. Just a brief bit of background. Vic was born in New Delhi into a creative family and studied fine arts, then did a major in film in Canada, where he now lives. Am I correct with that, Vic?
Yeah, pretty much.
Siphe was born in Zilani, South Africa, which is in the Western Cape, and he's now a professional ballet dancer with the National Ballet of Canada. I imagine our viewers may be curious to hear firstly from you, Vic, as to how your and Siphe's paths crossed in the first place and the background behind the film being made. Can you tell us a little bit about this, as this seems like a good place to start our conversation today?
Yeah, sure, because that's where our conversation started between me and Siphe. So yeah, that's a good question to begin with, I think. I actually saw Siphe when I was filming a smaller promotional piece for Canada National Ballet School. And he was I think he was 15. And my cinematographer actually saw him and pointed him out to me. And we were both enamored at looking at him through the camera lens amongst a group of other children. And he found him rather like scared of like Siphe, the way he looked through the lens. It felt like he's looking at our soul. And I remember Jeff pulling me over and like my DOP and telling me how much this kid had that extra special thing that made him stand out amongst all these other students that we were filming.
Yes.
And yeah, so later on when the opportunity came to make a bigger piece, Siphe was one of the choices that we were looking in to tell the story of.
Thank you, Vic. And Siphe, I was kind of interested to know what it was like for you to sort of be under the gaze of Vic, the filmmaker. Was it something like 4.5 years? I mean, were there times where, particularly I imagine as a teenager, you didn't want to be so visible to the world, or is being visible your comfort place as a ballet dancer? Can you just talk a little bit about that whole experience from your perspective of being filmed in that kind of intense way?
Siphe, we cannot hear you. Oh, your microphone is on the, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
yep, better.
that's fine.
Perfect. Sorry. Yeah. It was, honestly, it felt okay. I mean, as you said, it was a long process, this filming. And so I think I got more comfortable with the filming, with the cameras, but it was more about opening up to the camera. Like, it's okay to have the camera there, but you know, the interviews and having to kind of talk, that was the hardest part about it. But I mean, Vic and I obviously built a relationship over the years, and I think we were comfortable with each other. I was comfortable with him, and he had already seen a lot of footage, but also he had already taken a lot of footage without me being there, my family or other people in my life, my brother. So he had already kind of understood the story, I guess. So he wasn't only looking at it through my eyes, which is what I think helped a lot. So it wasn't just, we want to know everything through your eyes, but it was, you know, let's see what you have to say, what you have to add, and still knowing that there's other stories that make this possible. So I guess that gave me a little bit of comfort, being to be opened and you know, accepting of the filming. I mean, I'm not comfortable with the camera, so I wouldn't say I'm like comfortable with it, but you know, no one really is ever comfortable in front of the camera.
And it's interesting because I guess I would just sort of assume, being such an incredible performer, that, you know, being comfortable with the camera was sort of part and parcel. So it's interesting not to make assumptions. I wondered how the film has impacted on your life, in which ways it has, if you could talk a little bit about that, Siphe.
It's given me I think a voice, you know, without me having to speak much. And I think that's the one thing I'm so grateful for, because that will stay and stand forever, you know. And I hope it continues to be an inspiration for many, many kids, even just to see, you know, just having the access to relate and see the story, to me means more than anything, you know. That's the most important thing for me.
And Siphe, can you tell us a little bit about your early years in Zolani, how you first got into dancing? I mean, is dancing something that you and your brother always just did with the other kids, or were you considered to be a bit different, you and your brother, because you loved dance and you were so good at it? I mean, were you teased very much? What was that like for you when you were small?
You know, it was a bit of a journey, because me and my brothers did dance in the community, but we danced kwaito, and we danced street style dancing, you know, which is the popular style of dancing all over South Africa. We just happened to be the best in the community, so we were kind of like, I guess, cool, quote unquote, like, you know, the cool kids, because we could do it, and we could do it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
But then that started to shift when Fiona Sutton came to South Africa to try and teach ballet to the kids. And so now we were getting into classical ballet, something foreign, something completely different, something not cool at all, you know. A lot of girls did it, you know. And then the narrative started to shift in the community. Like, you know, the ballet boys, and then, you know, the teasing came up. But I never really felt out of place. I mean, in a community where there isn't much to do, to be doing something felt pretty significant for me. And I knew that from a young age. I was like, I'm doing something, and I'm learning every day, you know.
Yes,
so
absolutely. And how do you make sense of the fact that your life has turned out so differently, I guess, from so many of the children in Zolani that you would have grown up with?
You don't really, but you just are grateful, and, you know, it's a huge responsibility too. You know, over the years I've talked about it with, you know, my mother here, Kelly, and my mom at home, and my brother even, the responsibility we have to give back and to inspire, really. And, you know, I feel like inspiration is the biggest gift you could give a child, you know, something that they can aspire to be. That to me, I think, is the biggest thing you can give a child. And I had a lot of inspiration in my life, and I think that's what helped me become who I am and work the way I do. And, you know, so I just try to give that back.
Absolutely. I mean, where do you feel that most of that inspiration actually came from, Siphe?
My brother. My brother. And it wasn't even that I was looking up to him as this huge successful person, but his work ethic and, you know, his sensitivity, you know, his talent, but his hard work, you know, just seeing those things, just seeing that if you just keep on this track of, you know, discipline and working hard and loving what you do, and with a bit of luck, it'll take off for you, you know. Always just a little spice of luck is always needed, you know.
And Vic, what was it about Siphe's story that resonated with you? I know you spoke about, you know, the impact of seeing him dance and what that was like for you the first time, but I'm kind of wondering about how the film impacted on you personally. I mean, had you had any connections with South Africa before you started filming? Had you been there? How did that all kind of impact on your life?
I mean, when you make a documentary, you don't know what it's going to give you. You go with the flow. So it's kind of like life. You don't think that you're going to be impacted by jumping in. You follow your heart. And Siphe was one of the 6 stories actually that we're following from the school. And he was actually number 5. But as we started filming him, the other stories didn't match up to his caliber and the arc of his story. So they started dissipating, and we followed his story more and more. And then we felt that as we were filming it, you go into the process thinking that that's the story is going to be, but life always tempts you becoming something else. So we go to South Africa to know about Siphe, but South Africa is South Africa.
Yes.
Like it changes you and it leaves a mark and it colors you in its own way. And then it wasn't about Siphe anymore. It became about life and the joy of dance, and it became about everything and not just one thing. So, and we just had to follow and just be caught up in not just the whirlwind of Siphe, but also the tide of South Africa and the elements and the things that it brings with us. So it's not my decision. The film made itself. I was just there to capture it.
And I think, you know, the film really shows kind of diversity and the richness of South Africa. It's sort of steps, certainly took me as an ex-Cape Townian right back into where I was born. So I thought that was, you know, brilliantly and movingly done. I suppose if I was curious also to hear a little bit about the transition and the move to Canada. You were, what, 11 years old when you went to live there, and I guess just the cultural difference, moving away from your family, your mom, your brothers, your siblings, you know, leaving your language, your culture behind. I kind of wonder about, you know, the years when you were so small and kind of dealing with that as a young person. I guess maybe only as a sort of slightly older, more mature person, you look back and see it differently. But I'm wondering what that was like for you and how you dealt with that as an 11-year-old.
I think I was super lucky to be with, you know, my Canadian family. I think that made the biggest difference, you know, to instantaneously be loved and be accepted from the beginning, right? So it's just, you don't have to feel like you're acting and you have to live up to a certain place in order to be accepted, you know, to really be welcomed with open arms. And then the National Ballet School is, I think it's the best school in the world because they are also a family, you know, and the way they treat the kids and the children's families, and so it was really just like my world just got bigger, and I was just eating it up, really. I was, you know, only once I started getting older that I got a bit homesick at times. School was getting harder, life was getting more complicated, you know, all these things, responsibilities, and so then I started to feel like, oh man, I would love to be home. You know, I miss like seeing my nieces and nephews grow up. I miss seeing my uncles, my cousins, and having that part of my life, you know, still ground me and keep me motivated. Yes. But I never really felt strange, I guess, you know. I didn't really feel strange because I think I had dance, and at the National Ballet School, you're there at 8 a.m. till 6:30 in the evening, right? So like you're doing academics, you're dancing, you're with your friends, and everybody's from all over the world. And it's such an accepting space. And I think when you're in a place like that, it's very easy to get lost in it, you know, and I did in the best way possible.
I was thinking, really, but in a good
yeah,
way.
no.
It sounds so nurturing as you
100%
describe it. Do you have any plans ever to teach or work in South Africa? Is that something you think that maybe, you know, when you're a bit older, you might do? Would that appeal?
I would love that. I was actually just talking to my friend Ryan, who's in the film as well.
Yeah.
You know, we were just like, what? You know, we're just brainstorming ideas of you know, what's a way to leave something that, you know, in the same way that this film is leaving something in the world that's, you know, not directly from me. Like, it's not like, oh, it's about me, this is what I'm doing, like you can do it too. But the space, you know, I would love to create a space in Zelani. I would love to have, you know, not a center, but a building where, you know, there's you know, a place for kids to experience dance and to learn the fundamentals of dance, such things as like discipline, and
Yes.
even having that in your life at a young age can go a long way, I would love that. I would love to be able to have a center, and I can go teach. I can have guest teachers. We can have guest performances. I can bring all my international friends to Zalani, and we can train kids. That's my dream. That would be a dream.
It sounds like a wonderful dream. I mean, can you say something about that dream, Vic? What do you think?
Vilm can document the journey.
Sure. Yeah, I've practiced. I've had, yeah. Sure.
You know all the streets already, so it's all good.
I do. Yeah, I do miss it quite a bit, actually.
And Siphe, what have been some of, would you say, the biggest, challenges in your career and some of the highlights? I know you're young, you just 21. Any sort of standouts for you? Any standout performances? Or, trips overseas?
Oh man, everything. I mean, like my mom just came for the second time in March.
Wow, okay.
To watch me perform, and it was her first time watching me perform on the stage. And, that was a highlight. My brother coming to watch me in Holland was a huge highlight.
Yes.
I mean, just even where I am, to me, every day I'm just grateful to be here. So.
Absolutely. And just lastly, before we finish up, what are you rehearsing at the moment? I mean, is it possible to be rehearsing in your apartment, or how are you and the rest of the company sort of managing to stay fit and active and keep going during these challenging times of COVID-19?
Yeah. Well, the company offers ballet classes through Zoom every day. And they record them so dancers can, with different time zones, because a lot of us went home, and so we can still kind of have that feeling that we're still together. So the company's, created classes on Zoom, and people can take them whenever or together. And I'm just dancing around in my basement. I've got a floor, and depending on what comes to me, I dance. Sometimes I don't, and I'm really using this time to actually take a break and take a moment for myself. And figure out myself.
Enjoy. And just to end our conversation, I'd just like to echo the words spoken about you in the film at your graduation, Siphe, which resonated. And that was the graduation teacher saying, "Your talents are unique, and you reveal a depth of spirit which will open people's eyes to the power of dance." Thank you, Siphe, for opening my eyes, and Vic for making Siphe's story come to life in such a powerful and moving way. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.